There's no more books. Sorry. Yeah, there's no more. Yeah. All right. So let us begin. So last week we spoke about the written Torah and the oral Torah and their relationship with each other. That the written Torah is all about the writing, while the oral Torah is more about the person who is being mentioned within the oral Torah. So now our next lesson, which is our lesson of today, we are going to discuss the Midrash. And the Midrash, the reason why lesson number 2 is discussing the Midrash is for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, because it's actually an equal time with the Talmud. And in Torah, which we're going to I'm going to speak about this a bit later, there is a hierarchy in when a text comes within an era. Depending on the era, there is a hierarchy about of how important that text is. So like from the Torah, nobody could argue with anything from the Torah. But if something's a Mishnaic text, so, Mishnaic, from the Mishnaic era, the Mishnah, then there is arguments over there. People and someone who lived in that era could have held differently. Us being in our generation, obviously, we take the Mishnah as something also we cannot question the Mishnah. So the Mishnah and the Midrash are actually the same rabbis, different authors, which we're going to get into the authors later, but they are actually the same rabbis. And the reason why we're doing the Midrash first is because the Midrash is more related to the Torah, to the written Torah, because the Midrashic style of learning will be using a lot more the words of the Torah to get to a point. And the Mishnah way of learning, the Talmudic way of learning, is more about the bottom line, the law, not as much about the learning how to deduce something from the Torah, etc. So over here, just remind everyone you have your map to look at, which will be useful to follow. We won't need it as much this class, but here is our map. So that's the written Torah and the rest of the oral Torah. And here are all the Midrashic teachings on the map over here. All right. So what is the Midrash? So usually when someone says the Midrash says, so a lot of times someone heard a great line on the Parsha and he doesn't know where it comes from. So he'll say it says in the Midrash and he says his great thing from the Parsha. So either it's true that he got it from the Midrash or it's not true. That's just a cynics, when you don't know where something comes from, they just say it's from a Midrash. So the Midrash the question is it a particular series of books or is it a certain style of teaching? And the answer is it's both. It's a way of learning the Torah, which is called Midrash. So what does Midrash mean? Midrash comes from the word dorash, which means to seek out, to get to the bottom line. So Midrash comes from the word dorash, like there's in the yeshiva world, we'll say the drasha, the rabbi's drasha, when the rabbi is trying to take from the parsha and he connects it to the politics of the time and he connects it to whatever, he's seeking out from the Torah how to apply it. So that is a way of learning. But now, if I make a drasha, I'm not a midrashic rabbi, so that would not be considered a midrash. So there are books which are similar to the midrashic way of teaching, but they are not considered medrash. And the drasha, so what are you seeking out? We're seeking out from the Torah, because if you remember from last week, we said that the written Torah is like the DNA strand, and afterwards, after that, we had to build the makeup of the human being. It was all those different parts. So that is what the Midrash's goal to do, is that the Torah says something very simplistic, very simple line. So there's the pshat, which is just to understand the most simplistic level. Then there's the, it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So now the pshat is, I just told you the pshat, that's the most simplistic translation. But now, why does the Torah start from there? There's so many discussions about that verse? Why does it start? Why does it say Bereshit in the head? Reshit comes from also the word head. Why doesn't it say Betchila, which would mean more practically in the beginning? There are many discussions like this throughout the Midrash, and that is getting the drasha, going through to find the deeper meaning of the thing. That is to find the deeper, we're trying to get the deeper meaning of everything. So now that being said, now, okay, I'm skipping a lot from what I'm supposed to be saying. All right, so now when it comes to Midrash, there are actually two categories in Midrash. There's category number one, which is when you hear, this is the type of Midrash we all know about, and it says the Midrash says, it's usually some bizarre or some amazing story. Like, for instance, there's a story about the story of Abraham and him smashing the idols. Everyone know that story? So it says when Abraham, his father ran an idol shop and he smashes all the idols. He gives the hammer to the biggest idol, and his father comes back. He says all the animals have this big quarrel, and all the idols have a big quarrel. Who will get the sacrifice? And the biggest idol wins. So that's actually a story that's not in the Torah. It's not in Torah. It is actually in the Midrash. So that is called an Agadic Midrash. Agada comes from the word, it sounds like Haggadah, which means to tell over. It's all those extra ideas. The second type of Midrash would be called a Halachic Midrash. These are much less popular. It'll take a word from the Torah and teach us all the laws that could be deduced from this. So today we're actually going to experiment with learning a Agadic Midrash and a Halachic Midrash, and we'll see how to step by step how the Midrash breaks down the Torah and how it breaks it down step by step. So these are the two categories of Midrash. One second. Sorry about that. Just before I do the video, just over here, there's a list of all the different types of Midrash. So now we're going to see a video of just going through the history of the Midrash and everything, and then I'm going to break it down. So let me play the video.
Welcome to the branch of Torah study known as Midrash. Midrash comes from the Hebrew verb drush, to seek out or expound. It refers to the effort to explore, explain, and expound on the Torah. It is also the title of an entire genre of literature generated by Mishnaic and Talmudic sages, the phenomenal Jewish scholars who lived roughly between 100 and 500 CE. Midrashic literature comes in two forms. One, halachic. These works document the intricate methods used to analyze the typically terse biblical texts containing the Torah's 613 commandments. The goal of a halachic midrash is to show how the detailed laws governing the practical observance of those commandments are derived. Two, agadic. These works provide a wealth of explanation of biblical texts and narratives, parables that clarify or illustrate a point, moral and ethical teachings, philosophical insights, mystical traditions, historical narratives, and background information not explicitly recorded in the biblical text, and stories from the lives of the ancient sages. Much midrashic material was lost in the upheavals of Jewish history, but the surviving works form a library of their own. Here are the major midrashic works still in existence, including later era anthologies in chronological order. Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer explores the biblical events from the creation until the Jewish journey through the Sinai desert. It is attributed to one of the Mishnah's most prominent sages, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael preserves expositions on the book of Exodus that were taught in the academy of Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. Mechilta de Rashbi offers expositions on the book of Exodus from an alternative academy, that of the much beloved Rabbi Akiva. Its recording is attributed to his disciple, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the famous author of the mystical Zohar. Seder Olam, meaning world chronology, chronicles biblical and post-biblical history from creation until the 2nd century Bar Kokhba revolt against the Romans. It is attributed to Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta of Sepphoris. Sifra provides key expositions on Leviticus, which focus on Kohanim, Jewish priests who served in the temple. The work is also called Torat Kohanim, the laws of the priests. Its partner volumes on the books of Numbers and Deuteronomy are known collectively as Sifri. The insights in these volumes were taught by the school of Rabbi Yehuda, a disciple of Rabbi Akiva. Maimonides identifies the Talmudic sage Rav as the compiler of Sifra and Sifri. Midrash Rabbah is a series of 10 separate works that provide textual expositions, historical narratives, and moral teachings structured as commentaries on the 5 books of Moses and the 5 scriptural scrolls: Song of Songs, Ruth, Esther, Lamentations, and Ecclesiastes. These anthologies were compiled between the 3rd and 12th centuries and record teachings of Talmudic sages from the land of Israel from the 3rd and 4th centuries. Midrash Tanchuma is a foundational book offering expositions on the 5 books of Moses. It is named after a 4th century author heavily quoted in the work, Rabbi Tanchuma. The Talmud is not an exclusively midrashic work, but its legions of volumes include a vast treasury of halachic and agadic midrashic material. Midrash Tehillim offers commentary on the book of Psalms. Its era of compilation is unknown, but it is cited in works as early as the 11th century. Yalkut Shmoni, a voluminous midrashic anthology covering all 24 books of Tanakh, was compiled by Rabbi Shimon Hadarshan of Frankfurt, Germany. Midrash Hagadol is an anthology attributed to Rabbi Dovid bar Amram al-Adani of Yemen. Ein Yaakov, an extraction of the Agadic sections of the Talmud, was compiled by Rabbi Yaakov ibn Habib of Spain and Greece. The sheer number of surviving midrashic works spanning 15 centuries testifies to the Jewish scholars' remarkable commitment to identifying and expounding the wisdom and guidance contained in God's Torah.
All right, trick question. Who could guess what is the largest midrashic work? The Talmud. Who would think that? You know, the Talmud, everyone knows, is this, it's a book of Jewish law, but actually the Talmud ends up being the largest book of midrashic teachings, because actually 30% of the Talmud is actually has midrashic teachings there, because midrash, as we said earlier, is a way of learning, and therefore when sometimes the Talmud will say a law, then we'll say, how do we know this? And it'll get into this whole midrashic discussion to try to figure out how we know this. So that's number one. Number two, just before we start experimenting with midrashic texts and learning them and going through on this, it'll be a very incredible journey. I just want to say one thing. So in the video, there are some midrashic texts that appear in the 13th century. The Yalkut Shimoni, I think, was the 13th century. So one thing I want to point out is it's a midrash. If even the later midrashic texts, all of the rabbis which are quoted within it are all rabbis from the Mishnaic and Talmudic era. So from the 1st till 5th century. No one later than that will be found in a midrash whatsoever. Those are all just, they're all going to be in that era. era. And that's it. All the rabbis, even if the book was published later, they'll all be in that era. So where do they get these teachings from? So like we spoke about earlier, the story with Abraham breaking the idols, Moses, probably when Moses gave the Torah, he told us that story. We knew that story. But then when Judaism got decentralized, there's Jews started writing down these traditions and stories and ideas into books. And that's the Talmud, that is the Midrash, and that's why there's different compilations of different midrashes which weren't written down yet till about the 12th century. They're being people wrote them down in order that they shouldn't be forgotten, and I'm sure there's a lot which we don't have written down, which unfortunately we don't have any. All right, so I want to take anyone in the live audience have any questions.
Okay, ask, when people want to study these midrashes or like the commentaries, when do they do that? Like, because I know I read the Torah, I read the Torah book, I read the Zohar. When do we do the midrash? Or how's that process?
So yeah, so I'm just gonna repeat your question. So Randy asked the question. He said that when do we learn Midrash after we have the time we learn Hasidic teachings, we learn the Chumash. When does the Midrash come in? So the answer is if you learn Talmud, you'll end up knowing a lot of Midrashic teachings. Some people enjoy learning Midrash. One time the Rebbe said for a joke, the Rebbe was quoting a Midrash, and the Rebbe said for a joke, we are all busy learning Hasidic teachings. Who has time to learn Midrash? The Rebbe said, because the Rebbe said that nobody, the Rebbe quoted it and nobody knew what he was talking about. So the Rebbe said that for a joke. It's not really in the yeshiva world. It's not really learned. It's something that it comes from. It's all out there. Actually, the big Midrash is actually, a lot of the Midrash is translated into English. Rashi's commentary is a lot of it's based from the Midrash. So you'll get a lot of it from different commentaries on the Torah. If you're reading the Torah, you get a lot of it, but you don't get the whole thing.
The Midrash that we have has this commentary to the actual Torah.
Yeah, so that commentary, some of it, yes. All right, any questions here? Or should I go? All right, Zoom. Questions? Any questions on Zoom? All right, let's continue. All right, so now we're going to start off with discussing an Agadic Midrash. So an Agadic Midrash will be stories, parables, or secrets of the Torah. Those are all kind of bunched in to the Agadic section of the Midrash, all those different ideas. So I want to show you actually a very, very interesting point, a very, very interesting Midrash, which can be found on page 64 in the student book. It says as follows. It says as follows. So so text 2, it says, when iron was created, the trees started trembling. Said iron to them, why are you trembling? If no tree among you enters into me to provide a handle for my blade, not a single one of you will be hurt. So that is a midrash, right? So it's a very nice parable. Can I get someone on Zoom? Alan, Alan, can you tell me something you learned from this midrash, right, that we just said?
It reminds me of the story of the scorpion getting a ride across the river from, was it the frog or something? Just if you don't, your actions could cause a negative impact on yourself. So you have to watch what you do. if the tree wouldn't give itself over to the iron, then it wouldn't be in trouble. So it's the tree's responsibility for taking care of itself, just like the frog's responsibility for not giving the scorpion a ride. So you have to be responsible for yourself rather than blaming others for something bad that might happen to you. That's what I get out of it.
Very nice. Anyone in the live audience want to volunteer, want to say something else or different idea? Yes.
If iron was, if we didn't have iron, we would never be able to build or create by being the dark age.
Yeah, but this is about the tree. I'm talking about what's this parable about the tree and the iron. Anyone have a no one? So
Maybe,
yeah.
it's like the trust between, something about trust, like, trees believe in the iron that they would be good and not hurt them.
So
That's what
Netta understands about trust, that the trees, they should build a trust with each other. So
Can I actually give you an alternative?
no, I want to
Okay, you don't have to.
sorry.
I don't-
After the class. So actually I want to speak about something for a minute. We're going to shelve this for a moment. So I'm going to shelve this for a moment, and we're going to talk about why is it written in such a way. So the answer why it's written in such a way is because, so every parent knows that if you want your kid to understand something, you say it in a story, and all of a sudden the kid is dreaming about it. They close their eyes, they see themselves in it, and they relate to it much better. That's the best way to understand the deep reason. So that is a reason why the Midrash is written in the story format, but that's not the reason. A deeper reason for this is because if the more that it is, the deeper it is so not understandable sometimes. It only can be brought down in a story. And when you hear it in a story or in a parable, in a Hebrew and mashal, then it actually, we can all relate to it on our own way. We're not stuck in understanding in the words it is. And either you understand it or over here, there's so many levels of understanding. You take this, like we had a few different ones. Randy had something he wanted to say, but I was going to move on the class. But we all have our own, there's so many ways to learn this. So one of the ideas of learning this, another idea which is actually written in, is that it's about keeping a trust amongst each other. Very similar to what Netta said, but a little bit different. That within the community, let's say the tree community, if none of them give in to the iron can never knock down a tree. As soon as one of the trees kind of gives in to the iron, automatically that makes a weakness amongst all of them. If they all stay strong and stay connected, if we love each other, nothing can harm us. As soon as we start quarreling amongst ourselves, all naturally it gives a space for outside ideas to have influence on us. And this is why actually the first Chabad Rabbi, he wrote, like it's been on the slide sitting, that the deepest levels of the Torah are actually found in the Ein Yaakov, which is the midrashic part of the Talmud. That is because there are so many deep understandings of it all. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, because it's all written in like this code that like you could learn it today and you feel inspired one way, and you come back tomorrow and you could have a whole new inspiration, a whole new idea. So now I want to take us through I want to take us through a teaching of, I'll take questions after this. I want to take us through a very interesting teaching on page 66 of the Midrash. It sounds very esoteric, and we're going to get back to it and understand it in a deeper way. So here it comes. It is written, and God said, "Let us make a human." With whom did God consult? Said Rabbi Simon, when God came to create the first human being, the ministering angels formed different factions, different parties. Some of them said the human being should not be created, while others said the human being should be created. Thus it is written, kindness and truth encountered each other. Righteousness and peace abutted. Kindness said, create them, for they do acts of kindness. Truth said, do not create them, as they are full of lies. Righteousness said, create them, for they do acts of righteousness. Peace said, do not create them, as they are full of quarrels. What did God do? He took truth and hurled it to the earth. Thus it is written, you cast truth to the ground. Said the ministering angels to God, Master of the world, why do you insult your signet? Said God, may truth rise from the earth. Thus it's written, truth sprouts from the earth. Truth sprouts from the earth. So here's a very interesting Agadic Midrash. Let's shelve this for a minute. We're going to shelve this till the end of the class. We're going to get back to this. A very interesting idea. You have truth. Truth says not to create the world. The idea of truth, because we're full of lies. Peace says not to create the world, because we're not peaceful, but we do acts of kindness. That says to create the world. Very interesting. Let's show that. We're going to get back to this. That is in just a great example of an Agadic Midrash. All right. Any questions? All right, let's continue. You had a question? Okay. So now there are actually, so now that we got this, we're going to move on to the halachic part, the halachic midrash, and how to learn it. So actually there are certain ways how you're able to learn the Torah to bring out a midrashic idea. So like it says in text 5, these are the laws that you shall place before them. Rabbi Yishmael says, these are the 13 methods of which the Torah is expounded. We were given to Moses at Sinai, So there's actually a different, whole bunch of different opinions How many, if it's 13, there's one opinion that actually says it's in the 30s. I think 32 of them. Imagine that. There's different ways how to understand, tools to employ to understanding the Torah that we could use to understand the Torah. So there are 13 of them. We're not going to get into them, but we're going to get into 4, not all 13. Well, we're going to use 4 of these, and we're going to apply it to different laws within the Torah. So here comes, let's look over here. So you have number 1. It's called a kal v'chomer, which means a logical deduction. For the lawyers out there, I think it's called a what? A fortiori. It's with a, no, this is a fortiori. A for, a fortiori. So the first one is a fortiori, which would be which we're going to get to, a logical deduction. The second one is, and if you're having a hard time understanding this now, we're going to go through it on, you're going to understand very clear what these are. The second one is riboy umiut, textual exposition. The third one is, it's a teaching by association. And the fourth one would be through alternate readings, that the Torah has no vowels, so there's different ways to read it. And this way we can learn different things from the Torah. So let's start with number 1, the kal v'chomer. So before we read the text, I want to give a bit of background to the text. You have the story of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph's brothers sell Joseph as a slave. He ends up in Egypt. Then there's a famine in the whole entire world. The world was pretty centralized then. So the whole entire mankind lived in the same region. So there was able to be famine in the entire world. So the whole entire world has famine. And Joseph's brothers traveled to Egypt in order to get food, because all the food was in Egypt. That was the one place in the world where there was food. So Joseph gives them a hard time. Joseph gives them a hard time in the beginning, and then they buy the food and Joseph returns their money. So then they come back, and Joseph tells them, do not come back unless you bring your brother Benjamin with you. They come back with their brother Benjamin, and they bring the money that Joseph gave them. And Joseph hides his cup in their sack, and he chases after them. They said, you guys stole my goblet. And he imprisons the brother, which he put it in, and then he reveals he's Joseph. That is the crux of the story. So while they're trying to prove to Joseph that they are innocent, they said as follows in text 6. They said, behold, the money we found in an opening of our bags, we return to you from the land of Canaan. How then would we steal gold and silver from the house of your master? So this is a perfect example of Kal V'chomer. There's a few of them within the text of the Torah. This is one of them. That they say as follows. They're saying, if we're so honest that the money you gave us back by accident, we return to you, then for sure we're honest enough not to steal. If you wouldn't steal, we wouldn't take advantage of your accident. For sure, whatever you did on purpose, we wouldn't steal from you on purpose. So that's a great example of Kal V'chomer. That's within the Torah. But now I want to say another one. A very interesting, we're going to use the Midrash. We're going to show you through the Midrash a great example of a Kal V'chomer. So there's actually a law called the roadside assistance law, the AAA law. In the Torah, anyone knew there's a roadside assistance law? So there's a law about roadside assistance. It goes as follows. So let's look at text number 7. So the Torah says like this: when you see the donkey of your enemy collapsing under its burden, and you are inclined to desist from assisting him, you must assist him. So we're going to get back to this text. So there it is. So what's the scenario? The scenario is that you're walking down the road and you see your enemy. Your enemy the dunce is, he loads his donkey too much. And his donkey collapsed. So what's the rule? The rule is if you're walking down the road, you see your enemy, you must help him. That's what the Torah says. And that's one of the 613 mitzvahs. So now the question is as follows. So great. What if you're walking down the road and you bump into your friend? Same scenario. Instead of your enemy is your friend. Seems from the Torah you don't need to help him. Right? Your enemy you need to help. Your friend you don't need to help. So when we use a Kal V'chomer, we'll deduct if we'd say as follows. I'm going to say it with the yeshiva tune. If you're walking down the road and someone you hate, their donkey's collapses, you have to help him. Then for sure, someone who is your friend, for sure you have to help him. Of course you do. That's simple logic. The Torah is going to say the lowest possibility, because everything above your enemy, you'll for sure have to help. If you have to help, even this guy that messed you over, this is the guy that he's been squatting on your property for a few years and you hate him. You're waiting for him. You're suing him. I don't know what you're doing. If him you have to help, then for sure you have to help your friends. So that's number one. Now, there's something else we learned from here. There's a rule that goes as follows. Text number 8. It says, this is a rule when it comes to the Kal V'chomer. It says, it is enough that the matter derived from the law should be strong, but not stronger than the source law. So how does this come into play over here? Let us explain. So let's use the Dio rule. So we have our roadside assistance rule. Let's say you are walking down the street and you have two people. You have your enemy and your friend. They're both collapsed, their donkeys collapsed together, and you can help both of them. Who do you help? So if they're equal, you can choose who you want to help. You're allowed to help your friend. If they're not equal, you just have to help your enemy, because that's what it says in the Torah. The friend can't be made stronger than the enemy. But if they're equal distance, if the friend's closer, you help the friend, obviously. If the enemy's closer, you help the enemy. But if they're equal distance, you could choose. But then the Midrash actually says, in ethics, ethically you should help your enemy first. You know why? Because we should train ourselves to not hate. And that will help us. It trains ourselves to be more loving, but there's no obligation to do that. That's on you if you want to. So now you cannot put your friend, well, soon, you cannot put your friend before your enemy, but if they're equal, then obviously, because it says enemy, in the Torah, the enemy comes first unless he's of equal distance. All right, so we finished Kal Vachomer. Does anyone have any Kal Vachomer questions?
How do I ask a question?
Well, okay, Ron, let me ask first. Yes. Yes, Jeff.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I gain from this is, let's posit a hypothetical where an IDF soldier and a Hezbollah combatant are simultaneously wounded, and there's an IDF medic. Are you saying that halachically the IDF medic is obliged to assist the wounded Hezbollah combatant? Is that what this is teaching?
So when we say enemy over here, we're not talking about an enemy that is trying to kill you, because in such a scenario, there would be no obligation to help. This is more about an enemy of someone you dislike very much. If it's someone if this enemy, let's say the Hezbollah, let's go back to our donkeys. Let's say there's a mechanic, a Jewish mechanic sees two army tanks he could fix. One of them's an IDF tank, the other one's a Hezbollah tank. Obviously, he should not fix the Hezbollah tank, because that's another where you're putting yourself in danger. And also, and even if the medic is not, or the mechanic's not putting himself in danger, he's putting other people in danger as a result. This would only be if this would be in a scenario where obviously there is no
Well, you're
talking more of it. Yeah.
You're creating a skewed hypothetical by saying, by helping the Hezbollah, you're creating a danger. Depending upon the extent of his injuries, he may not be mobile. He just may be stemming his hemorrhaging, and you're saving his life. And you got to choose between saving his life and saving the life of the IDF soldier. I mean, you're just defining enemy to be a friend rather than a combatant. At any rate, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the real world.
All right. Okay. One second. Someone else wants to, yeah. Yeah, you heard what Ron said?
Not at all. You got to repeat. You can't hear.
All right. So Ron said that it says in Maimonides that if someone is raising up to kill you, you could kill him first. A self-defense law in the Torah. And he said that's why he feels it should have said stranger over an enemy. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to add to anything?
No, it's just that I don't think the Torah says that you have to put yourself in harm's way to be able to practice the Torah, policy.
Yeah.
That's not the, that does the Torah ever say put yourself in harm's way? Like when you have to make a decision like this. I don't know the exact place where it says that, but I'm sure they don't want to.
Yeah. So Randy said that he feels that Torah doesn't tell you to put yourself in harm's way as a result of doing a mitzvah.
That's a qualifier. Qualified. Not getting in harm's way.
Yeah. So the way I want to answer is that when we're talking about, the real truth is that when we're talking about enemy over here, we are not, it's actually talking about an enemy, that a Jewish enemy in the Torah is referring to it's that someone that you have personal animosity towards. The laws of battle are different when it comes to Torah. When we're in battle, there's no obligation whatsoever. Even if the guy, we could save his life, sometimes it's a kiddush Hashem. We are sanctifying God's name, and that would be a good reason to save. Let's say that in your scenario, the Hezbollah guy, that'd be a good reason to save his life, because we could show the world that we even care for our enemies. But there would be with this mitzvah, there actually wouldn't be the obligation of such. It would be this is talking about a fellow we're talking about within the Jewish community that you happen to despise.
Okay. You need a footnote.
What?
You
I need a footnote?
You need a footnote on the word enemy.
Yeah. Enemy that you could potentially like. Yes.
I know personally, you give aid to the enemy, you can be indicted. You can be in serious trouble giving aid to the enemy. If you have another combatant, which is for the British military or the American, and you don't give him emergency, because you don't give it, he's going to die.
Yeah.
But if you go out of your way for your enemy, I know in the military, you can be court-martialed for that.
Wow. Yeah, this is just in theoretical.
No,
Yeah, I mean, I know when, like, our enemy, when they get hurt, they get treatment in the hospital. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter, like, if they're, you know,
That's interesting.
so they still get, they don't give them time to shut us.
Yeah.
We still give them the treatment.
It's very interesting. We have over here someone that served in the IDF. So she said that that we actually do rescue them. We don't give them obviously guns or anything, but we'll bring the people we shoot to the hospitals if needed. That's how the IDF soldiers go.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
don't give them like that.
Okay, I wanna continue. So now let's go back to text 7. We're just we're talking about our enemy's donkey. So now let's go back to text 7. Actually, it should do this for me. So we're gonna do the next one, Riboy v'miut, textual exposition. So we're gonna use in the same, we're gonna be using our same verse, and we're gonna learn a different law from our enemy's donkey. So let's go back to text 7. What does it say? It says as follows. It says when you see the donkey of your enemy collapsing under its burden, and you are inclined to desist from assisting him, you must assist him. So what's this wording, assist, you must assist him? When I tell you, can you please do something for me? I would usually say, assist him. What's it saying? Assist, you must assist him. What's this? You must. So this is actually adding another clause to this idea. So what's the clause it's trying to add? So let's look at, it's actually adding 2 things. Number 1, let's look at text 9 as follows. It says in the Midrash, if one unloaded and reloaded, even 4 or 5 times, one is still obligated to unload again. As it is written, assist, you must assist him. If the animal's owner walked away and sat down and said, since it's a mitzvah that is incumbent on you, if you wish to unload, then unload. In such a case, you're not obligated, as is written with him. So you see, there are 2 things we're learning from here. Number 1, that we have to offer assistance until he got the help that he needed. That what says assist twice. So the Midrash, I think that's from Midrash. Yeah, no, it's from the Mishnah. The Mishnah, Midrashic teaching, but from the Mishnah. It says help him twice. So it means if he keeps on falling, you don't like say, oh, I helped you, then you run as fast as you can. You make sure you got on his feet. That's number 1. Then number 2 is, let's say the guy's lazy. The guy says, when I was a yeshiva boy, I used to love when people did this to me. I'm kidding. I'd be helping out at a Chabad, and there would be the rabbi or whoever it was would be schlepping tables. Like, oh, it's so good you guys are here. Or I'll just here, you schlep the tables. And like, I'd always feel like an idiot. Like, we can come here. You brought us here to put on film with people. Like if you need help, we'd love to help you, but don't put it on us. There's no mitzvah. So the truth is that we usually did it because we didn't have the chutzpah, but there's no, if the person needs help and they say, you have a mitzvah to do this, so I'm going to sit down and watch you. Some people get immense pleasure from watching other people work. Then you do not need to help them anymore because it says with you. It says assist, you must assist. Assist, you must assist with him. So this would not be with him, and therefore you would not have an obligation to help him anymore. Did everyone get that? Those two things. These two things we learned from the verse. These two more things. Thing number one is that you have to. It says assist, you must assist, which means that you, even if it takes a few times of helping, you must be there for him. But then it says with him, which means that's number two. Which says it says with him, which means that only if he's helping you throughout the process. Obviously, if the person's older and he could be helping him, would mean that he stands and you actually help him. But we're talking about a capable person. If he's not helping you throughout the process, he says, great, I'm going to go watch TV while you schlep up the boxes for me. Then you could tell him, how about I watch TV and you schlep the boxes because it's your own. If you can't take care of yourself, I do not have a mitzvah to take care of you. So that's the second thing we learn from this law. Now, we're going to learn something else. This is a third style of learning. It's called a gzeira shava or a hekesh or smichut. These are all association. These are different ways we associate. We can be through the same word or something. And this is how we'll learn different ideas of a mitzvah, how to do the mitzvah properly in this specific way. So let's take this into practicality. So we have actually, from the Shema, in 3 verses, we have 5 mitzvahs. So we're going to read through it. It says like this in text number 10, set these words of mine upon your hearts and upon your souls, bind them as a sign on your hands, and they shall be phylacteries, tefillin, between your eyes. Teach them to your children, to speak of them when you sit in your home and when you travel on the way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Write them on your doorposts of your home and on your gates. All right, who can list the 5 mitzvahs? No, I'm saying the 5 mitzvahs in here. So you got the hand tefillin, got the head tefillin, got teaching your children, got mezuzah, and you got mezuzah, and I'm having a hard time thinking right now. Not everything. Oh, and to learn Torah when you walk in the road. All right, so now let's dissect this. Thank you, yeah. Let's dissect this. So let's talk about tefillin. So, what does it say in the verse? It says you should put on tefillin on your hand and on your head. So, right? So which of these 2 quick pictures if you just use the dry verse, which one would be correct? The one that says correct or the one that says incorrect? It says put it on your hand and on your head, on your head and in between your eyes. So which one would be correct?
The one that says correct has the tefillins on his head and the tefillins on his arm.
So actually, it would be
incorrect. The one that's in his forehead.
Yes, the one that's on his forehead, which looks incorrect, and you see the box is on his hand. If you say bind them as a sign on your hands, that sounds like you put it on your palm or on the forehand, and he says put a phylacteries in between your eyes. It looks like he's doing exactly what the Torah tells you to do, but that's incorrect. So how do we get there? So it's by association. It says like this. Let's read the text number 11 from the Midrash. On your hand, meaning on your upper arm, but perhaps it means literally on your hand. The Torah therefore teaches us by stating in the first part of the verse, Set these words of mine upon your hearts. We are speaking of a place that is aligned with the heart. What is aligned with the heart? The upper arm. On your hand. This is the left hand. You say that it is the left, but perhaps it is the right. But we know this from the juxtaposition of the two verses. Bind them and write them. Just as the writing of the mezuzah is done with the right hand, so is tying the tefillin done with the right hand. So there's two things we learn. Number one, from the fact, let's take a pause for a moment. Number one, from the fact that it says, by your heart, right before, we know that's on your arm, right next to your heart. And number two, by the fact it says bind them and write them, we say the same way that same hand that would write a mezuzah should bind the tefillin. So therefore, what do we know? What do we learn? So if you're a righty, which most of us are, you're going to bind tefillin with your right hand. If you're left-handed, you'll bind tefillin with your left hand, you put it on your right. But it's all about the hand you write with. Now let's do number three. Between your eyes, meaning on top of your head. You say it means on top of your head, but perhaps it means literally between your eyes. The Torah therefore teaches us by writing, you are the children of the Lord. Do not gash yourselves and do not make baldness between your eyes for the dead. This is like immediately before the Shema, it says this. Just as there, in the case of the prohibition to tear out one's hair in mourning of the dead, the phrase between the eyes means the corresponding spot on top of your head. Most people don't have hair in between their eyes. I happen to have a unibrow, so that would work for me. But the most of us don't have hair in between our eyes. So what does it mean, the hair in between your eyes? It means over the forehead. So too, the phrase between your eyes on the verse regarding to the placement of the tefillin refers to the top of your head. So these are through association. We just learned how to put the tefillin. From the verse, it seems very unclear. From the verse, it seems very unclear. But actually, if you just use these associations, then we would be able, it's very easy, you can learn where to put the tefillin. All right, we have a question in the audience. Yes. So,
the way the Torah, which is perfect, says literally not your unibrow, but literally on the top of your cup, top of your head.
Yes.
And so the correct way is you bind it with your left hand, the right handed is the correct way, correct?
Yes.
Beautiful.
All right. So he said the same way you put on your head, you do it on your left hand. And he was pointing out, let me make sure that's correct. All right. Let's do our last one. This would be alternate readings. There's such a thing, Kriya and Ksiv. So there's a famous book. If you have your textbook, there's a famous book called Eat, Shoots, and Leaves. So if you look on the first one, the first diagram of eats, shoots, and leaves, you see a panda bear eating shoots and leaves. The second one, with no comma, the second one would be, the second one has eats, comma, and then shoots and leaves. It's a picture of the mafioneer shooting someone after he ate. Yeah. This is on page 76. It's a mafioneer shooting someone after he leaves. So the Torah is not written with any vowels. And you could think, it's 2023. What's going on? Let's put vowels in the Torah already. So the reason why the Torah doesn't have any vowels is because once we put vowels, it will diminish how to learn. It takes away different alternative ways of learning. Sometimes from the ways our things are spelled, we can learn multiple things because there's no vowels. That's why Torah doesn't have vowels, so we can learn multiple things from each and every word. And so let's get right into, I'm going to skip a whole bunch. Yeah, so alternative readings. So therefore, that's why there's no vowels, in order that we can learn stuff in different ways. Let's skip a bit to text 13 so we can see this clearly. So it's on page 79. There's a verse from Tehillim, from Psalms. It says as follows: May he dwell forever before God, kindness and truth shall be summoned to guard him. So the surface, this is like the shot level of this. This is King David expressing his yearning for closeness to God. And he's saying that he wants to dwell forever before God. But there are actually a lot of these words, so this might be a bit confusing for those who don't speak Hebrew. I'll try to do my best to make it as simple as possible. A lot of these words have alternative translations. So let's go. So the word yeshev, there's a chart, figure 2.7. The word yeshev, which means the pshat, the basic meaning would be he shall dwell, could also mean may it be settled. Olam can mean forever, and it can also mean world, I mean. Man can mean summoned or who will. And yinsaruhu, to guard him, could also mean to keep it. So translation A would be, like we said, may he forever dwell before God, kindness and truth summoned to guard him. Translation B, if we just change all those words, would look like this. May the world be settled before God, who will keep kindness and truth. And that ends off with a question. So that would be, so the Midrash takes the second version. This is the Midrashic version. And it goes and it explains as follows in text number 15. Said King David to the Almighty, Master of the world, may the world be settled before God. Why don't you balance your world and make equal the rich and the poor? Replied God, if such were the case, who would practice kindness and truth? If all were rich or all were poor, how would there be an opportunity for human kindness? So this is the question. May the world be, who will keep God? King David asks God, may the world be settled before God. Why are there poor people? We all have this question. Why is there poor people? Just make everyone rich and great. So King David, so God asks King David, that would be great, but then there'll be no kindness. And there's what pushes the world is kindness one does for another. And therefore there has to be the rich person and there has to be the unfortunate person, that the fortunate person can assist the unfortunate. So the big question is as follows. These are just fixes, these are just fixes of, these are all band-aids. Like, great, but why is this such an important need? Why does the world have to operate this way? When someone's poor and you give them tzedakah, you give them charity, you give them money, that's a band-aid. It doesn't help them. That helps them in the short term. They need it, but it's like a band-aid. It's not there is a systemic problem that they have. If someone's homeless, there's usually a deeper problem that a lot of times that needs to be solved to help them. It's just if you give them a hotel room, doesn't make them not homeless unless they try to get it back on their feet. But if they're just going to continue living their lifestyle, they have to make a lifestyle change. So the question is, why is there a mitzvah? Well, why couldn't just everyone be fortunate and you wouldn't have all these issues? So you remember I said when we read the Agadic thing, and we'll get back to it, the Agadic Midrash, we'll get back to it, text number 4. So let's all turn back to text number 4. Page 64, yeah, that's where it is. Let me just get the page.
66.
I'm gonna 66, page 66. So here it comes. Once again, and God said, let us make a human. With whom did God consult? Said Rabbi Simon, when God came to create the first human being, the ministering angels formed different factions, different parties. Some of them said the human being should not be created, while others said the human being should be created. Thus it is written, kindness and truth encountered each other. Righteousness and peace abutted. Kindness said, create them, for they do acts of kindness. And truth said, do not create them, as they are full of lies. Righteousness said, create them, for they do acts of righteousness. Peace said, do not create them, as they are full of quarrels. What did God do? He took truth and hurled it into the earth. Thus it is written, you cast truth to the ground. Said the ministering angels, master of the world, why did you insult your signet? May truth rise from the earth. God said, may truth rise from the earth. Thus it is written, truth sprouts from the earth. So so now if you look closely, you realize that there's two characters, truth and kindness, reappear in King David's dialogue. We have truth and kindness twice, because King David said he wants truth. King David says, 1 second. So the question is, what is the problem with there being no opportunities for kindness, like we asked? So I already asked the question. Then we read the text. The question is, what is the problem with that? So the answer is that this is what God has said. What happens with God? That God said, I threw down my truth and let it sprout from the earth. That God created a chaotic world. And the whole mission, our whole mission, is to make sense out of the chaos. Today was actually the 10th of Shvat. There is a very interesting Midrash, which is associated with the 10th of Shvat. The 10th of Shvat is the day the Rabbi became the Rabbi. So it's a very, very interesting Midrash, which is associated with today, which is the Rabbi would speak about every single year. It goes as follows. It says, come to my garden, my sister, my bride. That's from Song of Songs. It's a verse. And the Midrash explains that God, in the beginning, God created the world and his divine presence within this world. And through our sins, his presence left the world. Through the sins of Adam, starting with Adam and 7 generations. And then there are 7 generations of righteous people brought God's presence back to the world. And basically, because the whole purpose of creation is that God wanted a dwelling place for himself down here. So it begs the question, why does God want a dwelling place for himself down here? What is so special about here? So it's explained in Hasidic teachings, but it's really from the Midrash. The Hasidic teaching explains an example of a bird. Why does someone need a parrot that could speak? Why does someone need a bird that talks? Why do you need that? I could speak. If someone you want to buy a parrot for $2,000, I'll just walk around with you for a day. You give me the money, and I'll talk. Any words you want me to repeat after you, I'll repeat after you. That'd probably be pretty annoying, but the parrot is super fun because the parrot is something special. God wanted to create a world that that's the whole point. When we go back to text 4, it says,
David, you froze about 30 seconds. We missed.
Where was the last thing you heard me?
The parrot being special, I think.
So the parrot is special because birds don't usually speak. A human speaking is normal, so it's pretty annoying if someone repeats everything you say. So God created the world. He created a world that'll be special if you do a good deed. There's an unfortunate person, and we can make special. The world is not peaceful. God made a world that we can make it special through peace. And that is what's special about creation. And that's why God created the world in such a way. And that's why peace on its own right said, don't create the world, because humans are not peaceful. What does God say? God says they're not, but they can make a peace out of the chaos. Truth says, don't create the world because people are deceitful. God says, yeah, but through kindness and through righteousness, they could bring truth to the world. And that is the whole point of creation. And that's what this Midrash is coming to teach us. And how do we know this all? We know this all through, we're getting back to the power of association through the words of a pasuk having 2 meanings, of a verse having 2 meanings, when this is the deeper meaning of it all. we can learn out such a the whole deep meaning of our creation. So with that, I want to end. It's and I want to take any questions that we might have. Before then, I'll summarize. I'll sum up everything we went through afterwards. Anyone have any?
So
Yes.
if you have one individual who say that we shouldn't have man upon the earth, which means all animals, which means we won't be here. Are these individuals saying angels are light or the dark? But if God is God, why would he have to ask an angel? He would go, you know what? I want people. It's a big place. I want to see women. I want to see men. I want to see running around. Have fun.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
What's your name again?
Who?
What's your name again?
Seth.
Seth asked, why did God have to consult with the angels? He could just make the decision himself. So the answer to that question is God, the conversation with the angels was so God could bring out his point. Otherwise, we'd have the question. Because of the conversation with the angels, we have the answer to the question. When sometimes a teacher will ask a question in order so he can give the answer. And then so no one should have the question anymore, even though the students at this moment don't have the question. So God asked the question to the angels. So when we think deeper about the meaning of creation, that we could have the answer to the question. Any other questions?
Dovid, I have a question about, with you talked about the letters not having vowels, so you could
Yes.
create different translations. So can you derive from that the translations of the words aren't really that important? It's more that the Torah is trying to teach us different lessons from the same sentences throughout the Torah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the translation is important, but there can be more than one translation, and that is in order to learn different lessons. So the real when it comes to written Torah, we said this last week, the main thing is the actual words. The translation already a explanation of the words. So those will be less important than the actual words. That's a very good point. Anything else? You had a question?
Okay.
All right, so let me just sum up everything we said today. We said the Midrash has two different components. It has the component of the halachic branch and it has the Aggadic branch. The Aggadic branch would be more the stories, these deep discussions about pondering creation. That would be the Aggadic branch. The halachic branch would be discussing the law, like we did the example we did was the roadside assistance law, and how to from the words of the verse, how to derive all the different laws that come out of that. And then we said that in order there's 13 different ways how to learn to bring out a midrashic idea. And we went through 4 of them. We said there's the Kal V'chomer, the E Fiori. I pronounced that wrong? A Fiori. That's the Kal V'chomer. Then there's one by association, that if they there's one by association. There's one that you take from the extra words. You could learn out more details. And the 4th one would be from different ways to read the Torah. Those are, you could learn all different ideas. All right. Thank you so much.
See you again.